passed out. I don't know. We're trying to find some life. A few males and females have been shot. Upon that, there's like 500 people.
Ever get that feeling like something's just off?
Mm.
You know, that kind of nagging suspicion you just can't shake. Well, today we're going to deep dive into a story where those gut feelings could have been life-saving. It's a case of marriage, betrayal, and a slow poisoning. It's chilling. It's unbelievable.
What's really disturbing about this case is how easily something so sinister can hide in plain sight. We're looking at Mark and Linda, a couple who, from the outside, seem to have it all. Comfortable home, kids, you know. The picture of suburban bliss, but behind closed doors, a much darker reality was unfolding.
Yeah, it's one of those things you hear about and think, no way, that couldn't happen in real life.
Right.
Mark started experiencing these vague, almost dismissible symptoms. Nausea, dizziness, fatigue, stuff we've all dealt with, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Easy to blame on stress or a bug going around.
Precisely. And that's what makes cases of chronic poisoning so difficult to diagnose. The symptoms often mimic common ailments, especially when the doses are small and administered over time. Add to that the element of trust. And it's a recipe for disaster. In this case, Linda was playing the role of the caring wife, tending to Mark in his moments of weakness. Talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing.
It's terrifying to think you could be going to the doctor complaining about these, seemingly minor issues, completely unaware that the person you trust most is the one making you sick and makes your skin crawl. So when did the truth finally come to light? Was there a specific incident, something that set off alarm bells?
The turning point came when Mark's symptoms escalated, landing him in the hospital. Thankfully, a doctor with a keen eye and a healthy dose of suspicion, I might add, asked the crucial question: had Mark been exposed to any toxins? And that's when the cracks in Linda's carefully constructed facade began to show.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty here. What did the investigation uncover? How exactly was Linda poisoning Mark?
Well, the details are pretty unsettling. Investigators discovered that Linda was using heavy metals. Think things like arsenic and lead, and even rat poison, to slowly weaken Mark over time. It was calculated, it was methodical, designed to inflict suffering without raising immediate suspicion.
It's just so disturbing. This wasn't a heated argument that escalated, a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. This was premeditated, planned out. Makes you wonder, what could drive someone to do something like that to someone they supposedly love?
That's the million-dollar question in this case. What was Linda's motive? Was it a twisted desire for control, a deep-seated resentment, or something even darker, lurking beneath the surface? It's a puzzle that investigators are still trying to piece together.
And to think, Mark never suspected a thing. He trusted Linda completely. She was his wife, the mother of his children. You have to wonder, how well can we ever truly know the people closest to us?
It raises some really unsettling questions about the nature of trust and the potential for betrayal, even in the most intimate relationships. It also underscores the importance of listening to your gut. If something feels off, if you have those nagging suspicions, it's worth paying attention to those feelings, no matter how uncomfortable they may be.
It's mind-boggling to think she pulled this off for so long. We're talking about a pattern of repeated poisonings, not just a one-time thing. How on earth did she manage to fly under the radar for so long?
Well, part of it has to do with the poisons themselves. You see, heavy metals, when administered in small doses, they can accumulate in the body over time, causing a gradual decline in health that's often misdiagnosed as something else entirely.
So it's like a slow burn, almost like some warped science experiment. But wouldn't doctors have picked up on something eventually? Weren't there any red flags in his blood work or medical tests?
Not necessarily. Heavy metal poisoning can be tricky to detect, especially if the doses are carefully calibrated. Plus, the symptoms can be so general. Fatigue, digestive issues, headaches. They're easily attributed to, other more common causes.
It makes you wonder if Linda had like some sort of medical knowledge that allowed her to, exploit these loopholes.
That's certainly a possibility. We know that she had access to information about these substances, and it's not a stretch to imagine that she researched their effects and how to use them without raising suspicion.
It's chilling to think that someone could use their knowledge, something that's supposed to be used for healing, to inflict harm in such a calculated way. But even if the poisons themselves were hard to detect, wouldn't someone have noticed a pattern? I mean, Mark was repeatedly getting sick, ending up in the hospital.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But remember, Linda was playing the role of the concerned wife, always there by his side, rushing him to the doctor. It's possible that she used that to her advantage, manipulating the situation to deflect suspicion.
So she was always one step ahead, using her perceived innocence as a shield. Did investigators ever find any evidence that pointed to a specific motive, like a life insurance policy, or something that would suggest financial gain?
Interestingly enough, no. It doesn't seem like money was a factor in this case, and that's what makes it even more perplexing. If it wasn't financial gain, then what was driving her?
That's the question that keeps coming back to me. What could possibly justify such a cruel, calculated act?
Some psychologists speculate that in cases like this, it could be a twisted need for control. The idea that by making Mark sick and dependent on her, Linda was asserting her dominance in the relationship.
But wouldn't that manifest in other, less sinister ways? Why choose such a slow, agonizing method? It's almost as if she derives some kind of satisfaction from his suffering.
That's a disturbing thought, but it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility. There's a concept in psychology known as malignant narcissism, where individuals exhibit a pattern of grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. In some cases, they may even derive pleasure from inflicting pain on others.
It's a dark thought, for sure. But could that really explain something as extreme as poisoning your own spouse?
It's important to remember that we're dealing with a complex psychological profile here. It's not about finding a single, clear-cut explanation, but rather exploring the various factors that could have contributed to Linda's actions.
So it's like a puzzle with multiple pieces, and we may never have all the answers. But even without a definitive motive, the impact of her actions is undeniable. It makes you wonder how many other cases like this are out there, flying under the radar, people suffering in silence because they don't even realize they're being poisoned.
That's a sobering thought, and it highlights the importance of awareness. We need to be more attuned to the subtle signs of poisoning, both physical and behavioral. Things like unexplained weight loss, chronic fatigue, and even personality changes could be red flags.
It also underscores the importance of trusting your instincts. If you have a nagging feeling that something's wrong, don't dismiss it. It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to your health.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to seek a second opinion if you're not getting the answers you need from your doctor. Sometimes a fresh perspective can make all the difference.
So thankfully, in Mark's case, there was that doctor who asked the right question, which ultimately led to Linda's arrest. What was the outcome of the trial? It's hard to imagine the emotional roller coaster, for Mark. On the one hand, finally having an answer to why he'd been feeling so awful for so long. But on the other hand, the realization that the source of his suffering was the person he trusted most in the world.
It's truly devastating, a complete shattering of trust. On a level most of us can't even fathom. The psychological impact of such a betrayal can be just as damaging as the physical effects of the poisoning.
Yeah, I bet. I'm curious about the legal side of things. What happened to Linda? Was she held accountable for her actions?
Yes, absolutely. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was ultimately convicted of attempted murder. The fact that the poisonings were repeated and spanned over a considerable period of time, it clearly demonstrated premeditation and intent to cause harm.
That's a relief to hear. Justice was served. But what about Mark? How did he cope with the aftermath of this whole ordeal?
The healing process in cases like this is often, long and complex. Not only did Mark have to deal with the physical recovery from the poisoning, but also the emotional trauma of betrayal and the loss of his marriage. It's a lot to process.
It makes you wonder about the lasting impact on his ability to trust, his outlook on life, even his future relationships. It's like a ripple effect, that touches every aspect of his being.
You're exactly right. This type of experience can leave deep psychological scars. Rebuilding trust, not just in others, but also in oneself, is crucial for his recovery. Therapy, support groups, surrounding himself with a strong network of loved ones would have been essential.
This deep dive has really made me think. It's easy to get caught up in the whodunit aspect of true crime, but this case, it goes so much deeper. It forces us to confront the darker side of human nature, the potential for evil to lurk beneath the surface of, seemingly ordinary lives. And it reminds us that even in the closest relationships, vigilance and self-awareness are essential.
I think that's a key takeaway here. We tend to associate poisoning with, fictional narratives, with villains in movies and books, but the reality is that it can happen to anyone, and often the perpetrator is someone we know. and trust.
It's a sobering thought, but an important one. It's not about living in fear or suspicion, but about being informed and empowered. Paying attention to those gut feelings, those subtle red flags that something might be amiss, and advocating for our own well-being, both physically and emotionally.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This case, as disturbing as it is, serves as a powerful reminder that knowledge is our best defense. The more we understand about the complexities of human behavior, the signs of potential abuse, and the resources available to us, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves and those we love.
Well said. This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive, and I think it's safe to say that we'll all be looking at our medicine cabinets a little differently from now on. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe out there.